we did 2 jobs on Monday. This is just for one crew. We did 2 jobs on Monday, 1 job on Tuesday, 2 jobs on Wednesday. So they're getting here at 5:45 in the morning, and they're getting home. They're getting back to the shop to unload the debris around 9 at night.
Wow. Nine at
And
night?
9 at night, and then
They're hustling.
yeah, and then probably getting home at 10:15, and then up at 4:30 or 5 to start again. Yeah, so this week we've done one crew in 5 days is doing 8 jobs.
That's crazy.
Welcome to the Landscape Cafe, brought to you with support from Fort Myers Garden Service, maintaining and protecting business and residential landscapes. Visit fortmyersgardenservice.com or call 239-990-7494.
All right. So let's go ahead and get this thing started. Hey, Jeff, how's it going?
Pretty good, man. How are you?
Good, man. Doing well. Excited to be in the office for another day. I was running around this morning, but came back into the office now that it's pretty hot outside. The weather's starting to cool off, but middle of the days are still pretty warm. So it's nice to get a little office time in the middle of the day. Thanks for giving me a tour of your place. So everybody that's listening, you want to share a little bit about your shop, talk a little bit about what you got going on there and how you kind of run your production on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so it's honestly a consistent tweaking. Like I feel like I'm always moving things around and trying to figure out what's going to be the best setup for the space that we have, for the volume of work that we do. Realistically, like, and I don't remember if we talked about this maybe a couple months ago, but I was weighing my options of, is it worth keeping the shop and the overhead that it costs me? Because there are local supply companies, and there's a lot of other fence companies in town that they place all of their material orders through a local company, and they send their crews every morning to the local supply house. They get their trucks loaded up and they go to the jobs. So they are able to save on all the overhead that I have to pay with a physical location, a person in the shop to pack jobs. And so they're able to have a lot lower overhead and be able to get jobs done a little bit cheaper, but it comes at a cost because the supply house where you go get the material, for one, most of the time they mess your order up. So if your guys don't catch it, then it's an added expense of having to bring materials out. And a lot of times it ends up being they don't have it that day. So you have to make extra trips out to the job. It's a little bit more frustrating for the people that work for you because, like my guys right now, they show up to the shop at 6:30 in the morning, and we get them loaded and get them out the door by 7 to 7:30. At the supply house currently, a lot of guys aren't even getting out of there to go to the job until 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
What?
1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Holy cow! That's the day is almost over at that point.
Yeah, no, it's pretty nuts. But there's so many companies that run like that. A lot of the subcontract crews, that's just kind of what they've come to expect. But that also ties in a little bit to like my view on the business. To me, if I can create a better workplace environment and a more easy way of working and way of life for my guys and make it easier on them, that's going to make them want to stay with me. That's going to make them want to continue to work with me. And hopefully that attracts better crews, so it's kind of a selling point for me to hire and find good guys. Mm-hmm. But it is. So what I've been weighing is the cost of having the overhead. I have to do a specific amount of volume through my shop to offset the costs.
Right. Okay.
What I mean by that is if I don't have 2 crews running full time, mm-hmm. and backtrack a little bit, it's nice to have it be convenient for my guys to show up and get out and get out the door, get starting jobs early, and to not have to run, an extra picket or something out to the guys. But at the end of the day, if that convenience costs me an extra $60,000 to $70,000, which is about what the overhead is just to run the shop, mm-hmm. if not probably more, that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to just make it more convenient on my guys and lose $70,000 to $80,000. So the shop does become beneficial and having a physical location does become beneficial when I'm able to do larger volume, because then I can order. And when I gave you a tour of the shop, I have quite a bit of material here right now, probably around $200,000 to $300,000 of material. And that allows me to purchase one directly from larger suppliers. So I can get better discounts. And sometimes if you think about it, if I have $200,000 worth of materials here, and I can save 10% buying directly through a larger manufacturer, that's $20,000 right there.
That's crazy.
So the question is, how quickly can I move that material? Because if it takes me, like I said, for simplicity's sake, say running the shop costs $10,000 a month, having the physical location. If it takes me a whole year to get through $200,000 of material, then essentially I'm paying $120,000 for the shop. I have a savings of 10% on my materials, which is $20,000.
Right. Okay.
Are you tracking with me?
Yeah. So then it wouldn't make sense. You'd have to move more than that.
Yeah. So I have to figure out where's the balance of how much material do I have to move and how many crews do I have to put into production to make sense for me to keep this. So like, I think, I remember if it was you or somebody else, but I for a while, I was really going back and forth. The fence, before the hurricane, the fence market had really slowed down quite a bit for two reasons. I think it's been kind of flooded with fence contractors. So we've had a lot of fence companies pop up over the last few years. So the work is obviously being split between more people. And so because of that and a few other factors, it had gotten a lot slower. And so I was doing all the math and these numbers that I was telling you, and I'm like, I'm losing money having the shop. So if I either need to downsize and I can run the same amount of crews and do the same amount of jobs and get rid of the overhead and have my guys go to the local supply house, or I need to scale up and start doing more volume and more work. And then as a business person, that comes into marketing, and that comes into, all different of those factors. So trying to figure that out. But the hurricane made it a lot easier decision for me because, immediately there's 80% of fences down. So the workload is insane. So we hired 3 salespeople. We hired a new office person. We hired a warehouse person. So it made that decision a little easier for me on what I was going to do as far as keeping the shop or not keeping the shop.
That is awesome. So how much percentage of volume would you say on a normal month you do both prior to the hurricane and then post hurricane?
What do you mean?
Just in a volume of work, dollars of revenue, or maybe it doesn't even have to be dollars of revenue, or how many jobs per month would you do prior to the hurricane? And then how many jobs per month are you doing like post hurricane? Is it a lot more?
It's substantially more. It's hard to figure out exactly just because it's so early after the hurricane.
Right.
Probably the easiest way for me to quantify it is like, so pre-hurricane, we would normally have about, at any given time, around 8 to 10 jobs on the board. As we would work through those jobs, we would get more, but normally we were in the 8 to 15, somewhere in there. That's how many jobs we would have, at any given time.
Right.
Currently, we have, I want to say, around 40 to 50.
Wow.
And honestly, that's very small. I mean, obviously, it's significantly larger than we were pre-storm, but that's with, like I said, I hired 3 salespeople, but all 3 salespeople are people that I know that they came to me because obviously the opportunity was there to sell a lot of jobs, but I'm one person and I was the only one that did sales before the storm. Right. So there's so much that I could do. So I did want to scale and hire some people, and I had people that I know that are in real estate and home inspections and businesses that had been affected and slowed down a lot from the storm that were asking me, hey, do you have any sales or anything I could do? So I saw that as a good opportunity. So I hired them, trained them. But now what I'm seeing is I don't know if it was the best decision because now they're getting busy again. So I've invested a lot of time and energy into getting them caught up as salespeople. And now they're I'm only getting 20% of their time rather than 80% of their time. And
Right.
so I'm in the process of trying to hire some more salespeople. But to the point that you made, 50 jobs on the book compared to or 8 to 10, that's quite a big increase, but it could easily be 300 to 400.
Wow, that's crazy. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
And so how many jobs can you do in a month with two crews that you run?
So we typically, like in the fence industry down here, typically if we're doing residential work, it's commonplace to do one job a day. So for a crew of 2 to 4 guys, you're trying to do a residential property in one day. This
Nice.
week, like obviously we're trying to get caught up. We have a lot of jobs we're trying to do. So
Hmm.
on my list this week of the jobs the guys have done, and we did 2 jobs on Monday. This is just for one crew. We did 2 jobs on Monday, 1 job on Tuesday, 2 jobs on Wednesday. So they're getting here at 5:45 in the morning, and they're getting home. They're getting back to the shop to unload the debris around 9 at night.
Wow. Nine at
And
night?
9 at night, and then
They're hustling.
yeah, and then probably getting home at 10:15, and then up at 4:30 or 5 to start again. Yeah, so this week we've done one crew in 5 days is doing 8 jobs.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
That,
but their paycheck for this week is for one crew
yeah.
is
It's
almost $11,000.
that's why they're working so hard. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Wow.
So
Well, good for you and good for them too. I mean, that's a win-win situation for everybody, man. And the homeowners too, I'm sure, are so happy because I've heard homeowners have gotten some fence quotes and they're like, yeah, we can get out there in about a year or so. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is going to be a busy, busy industry for quite a while.
yeah, the work will be around for a decent amount of time, and
Mhm.
and that's why it's an interesting conundrum of having a little bit of a slowdown in your industry, and
Mhm.
then literally overnight have more work than you can ever possibly imagine. And there's pros and cons to that. So one thing, and I'm sure you probably see this in your industry too, is one thing that you see is a very difficult battle to find and retain labor. So
Right.
whether you have employees, subcontractors, everybody's trying to steal everybody's employees. Everybody's trying to do whatever they can to get the labor. And then on the other side, labor is seeing the demand is extremely high. So they're upping their prices. So for me, our subcontractors basically overnight told us, hey, boss, we need about 90% increase from what you're currently paying us because we have 10 other people that have called us, and that's what they're offering.
Wow. That's heartbreaking. That's like so heartbreaking, frustrating. It's like, oh man.
Yeah, it is and it isn't. So I started this business after Hurricane Irma, so I got a little taste of it then. I'm getting much more of a taste of it now, but the reality is, and this does sting for the homeowner, is it gets passed to them. So I can't just take that hit. We still have to be profitable to stay in business.
Right.
So realistically, that gets passed on to the consumer.
Mhm.
And the thing that's frustrating is not as much. Anytime there's a supply and demand change, it makes sense for your employees and subcontractors to want more money,
Mhm.
but it's a battle of them becoming greedy or not.
Right.
That's where it kind of gets difficult, and I'm seeing that a little bit on my end of the greed kind of sets in, and rather than being happy and okay with, hey, we're making more money than we were before, work
Mhm.
is easier than it ever was, like it's a time to get good. It can easily turn into them holding that against you and becoming kind of greedy with you. And an example is I hired a subcontractor right after the storm. The first like 2 weeks, I was calling him saying, like, letting him know, because we were kind of gearing up for all the work. I was letting him like, hey, I need to know you're on board with me. I need to know you're going to be able to fill all these jobs. Like, you're not going to be working with anybody else. You're just working with us. And so he's like, yeah, for sure, for sure. Checked in on him 2, 3 times. The very first day that he showed up at the shop to do jobs, he looked at me and said, boss, I got bad news. He's like, I can only do 2 or 3 jobs a week for you. And so I asked him why, and he said, because he's selling jobs on the side now and he makes more money doing that.
Right.
So I said, fine. Okay. Like, it is what it is. I understand, but give me 2 to 3 days. Like, so 2 jobs go by. He shows up at the shop, looks me in the face, says, I can't do any more work for you. He's like, I make too much money. So I tried to explain to him, and hear me out. This is the same guy that 2 months came to me and said, I'm super slow. I need work. Will you please give me work? Please hire me. Please give me work.
Right.
So now that's the greed that I'm talking about, where it's like, yes. It's very short-sighted, and he's seeing, hey, I can make more money selling jobs on my own, and people don't really care that he's unlicensed because they just want their fence up.
Right.
But in a year, I can almost guarantee you I'm going to be getting a call from this guy like, hey, can you hire me? And he's really burnt his bridge with me because he put me in a very, very tough situation.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, that's a good example, man. I think that has got to be frustrating. So frustrating, man. Oh.
It's a challenge. It's another challenge. So a lot of people I've talked to are like, the storm is terrible, but you must be, it must be great for business. And it is good for business. There is opportunity, but you also have to be careful, because you can bite off more than you can chew and really put your company in a vulnerable position if you're not able to. I can sell all the jobs in the world, but if I can't fulfill them and fulfill them well, it's gonna help me in the short term. I'll make a lot of money quick, but it's gonna hurt the core of my business and what we're known for, which is quality and service and honesty.
Right. Absolutely.
The Landscape Cafe is a production of Pure Landscaping and the Niche Podcast Network. Learn more about Bailey, Katie, and the team by visiting purelandscaping.com. You can find us anywhere you listen to podcasts. And don't forget, the best place to rate or follow the show is at thelandscapecafe.com. Thank you for listening in. Stay tuned for the next part in this conversation.